sections, for example, it could be under well-being, pay, NHS issues, or wider BMA, etc. So you'll have sections as to where the conference motions are listed. Next slide, please. So there's often not enough time to debate all the submitted motions, as you attendees who have previously attended would have realized. So similar motions are sort of grouped together into brackets, and sometimes the agenda committee can write a composite motion, and this is based on the motions which are submitted and which have a similar theme, and these motions will be put in brackets below the composite motion. The agenda committee agrees the agenda and allocates times for each section during the day. So next slide, please. So at the conference, events move rapidly, and please listen carefully. Keep your agenda with you. It's digital this time, and you can follow it really closely. It's good to have a read before you come for conference. There may be also a supplementary agenda. You need to follow that too, if it's published and you have it in hand, either online or if you can print it out if you need to. And as you wish, tick off the motions as they debated so you can keep up to it. The motions will be coming up on the screen on the dais. To help you, the motion being debated will be, as I mentioned, behind the speakers, so you can see what's happening there. Next slide, please.
Sorry, John. Chloe, could you go back a couple of slides? The bracketing I wanted to be very, very clear about. When we so say, for example, the conference wants to associate specialist grade was a motion in the olden days, and 3 or 4 regions used to put motions about it. So when you bracket the first motion is the one being proposed. You have to talk to the first motion, not the brackets. And against also has to be against the first motion. We'll try and give you an example later on. Okay, sorry, John.
No, that's okay. That's perfect. I missed to explain that clear. So motions are debated in the order they appear on the agenda you have received. So it starts probably from 1 and goes all the way down. The timings are strictly adhered to. So basically, if you start at, say, for example, 11 o'clock and to 11:45, the section starts at motion, say, for example, is it motion 1, it goes to 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So when the time is up for that section, any remaining motions within that particular section in the agenda are not debated. So for example, you have number 1 to number 10 within, say, health and well-being. So you might be able to get to number 7 and the session finishes and you move on to another section due to time. And then the next motion which we debated will be on the following section depending on the agenda. So you might not see number 8 under health and well-being debated. It might be the wider NHS number 14 or 15, whichever the motion is denoted on the agenda, would be the first motion to be taken up at the next session. Next slide, please. This is very important. If you intend to speak at conference, you cannot speak to a motion unless you have submitted a speaker slip. Speaker slips must be submitted online via the link, which will be emailed to you. It's very important you submit the speaker slips well in advance of the conference, or you can submit the speaker slips on the day up to the motion section. So you can understand when the section starts, it's very hard to submit your speaker slips at that particular time. It helps with organization if you submit your speaker slips early, because there's a few details you need to fill into the speaker slip and then submit it online. If you have any trouble, please speak to the agenda committee members who will be the agenda committee pen in the front of the conference hall.
John, again, apologies to interfere, but
No, it's okay.
This is vital
Right.
because
Yeah.
um, when Vaishali is looking at people who submitted speaker slips, she can then make sure that she calls equal number of people, calls equal speakers for, equal speakers against, make sure women are prioritized if that is the case, and gets a balanced debate. So if you don't put that speaker slip in, I mean, 99 times out of 100, you'll have some agenda committee member chasing you around that hall, to be fair. Wouldn't you agree, John? We've done that plenty times.
Clearly. Yeah. Yeah.
RD
And
has the hand up. I suppose they want a question in the middle. I don't mind.
Yeah, sorry, it's a quick one actually. It's because before we just pick up, a slip and fill and submit. But this one, how will they know that you want to speak and you are speaking to emotion and then and send you the link?
So,
Or do you,
so it is all going to come electronically. I'll tell you about the app in a bit. There are no slips on the day now. Although we can, I'm not sure it's going to work if we create a dual system. In the olden days, there used to be a dual system where you submitted a paper slip, and then don't forget the conference is hybrid. So that would disadvantage people attending online massively if we started accepting stuff in person. So we will give you the app, and on the app there will be a place to put a speaker slip in. The moment you submit it, the agenda committee will pick it up. It's got various little things that we need to know. Things like, are you a first-time speaker? Are you speaking for? Are you speaking against? Which region are you from? Um, and little things like this, so that as I said, Vaishali, who's the chair of conference, can then prioritize the speaking order. Because the thing we like at SAS conference is to hear your voices. The more voices we hear, the happier we are. Um, in fact, last year we didn't hear too many because we had a very crowded agenda, and we took the brunt of that. In that, people said that you didn't let us speak. So this year it's going to be the opposite.
Yeah. And just to add on what Amit said, if you are a first-time speaker, then you get a priority, most likely from the chair, to be called up to speak. And when you go to the agenda, you might not have presented a motion, or you not have submitted a motion from your region, but you might have some knowledge on some issue might be very close to your heart, which on a motion which is submitted from another region, for example, and you might have some insight into that. So you might better off, submit a motion, because when you sit there watching the debate, you might be sometimes, unable to air your views, as I can say, when you have not submitted your speaker slip. So next slide, please. So again, this is important. So you must indicate on the online speaker form whether you are a proposer or mover, and have a motion in the bracket, or want to speak for or against a motion. So what that means is, when you submit the speaker slip form, it asks you whether you are the one who submitted the motion. For example, it's come from your region. If I have submitted a motion from my region, if I say I want to reintroduce the associate specialist post, I would like, et cetera, et cetera. So it's my motion. I need to put a speaker slip as a proposer. And if somebody else from another region says, yes, I agree to this idea, or I do support this belief, then you submit and you are speaking for the motion. And somebody says, no, we do not want this, and you're speaking against the motion. So it is, that's how it works. So you have got three sort of small tick boxes which you have to tick off, and that is taken accordingly. So for example, as Amit clearly mentioned, your motion bracket, I want to speak for or against a motion. Sometimes you might have three or four motions, not just a composite. And if the first motion is taken up, remember, say for example, one A, one B, one C, and your motion might not be the first motion up on the agenda, and you might not be able to call as a proposer. So you're speaking for the motion or against the motion, depending on how your motion, which is not being taken up, is down the 1A, 1B, C, etc. So the conference chairs, as Amit said, we already mentioned this point. Next slide, please. So again, key thing we mentioning it again and again, the proposer will only be called if they have submitted a speaker slip. Otherwise, the chair will propose this motion if there's no proposer. So key thing is get together when people are coming the previous day or within your WhatsApp groups or etc. Or when you come in for the pre-conference dinner, people are coming there. Can actually network. That's very important, and then you can check whether all you've submitted your speaker slips, whether all the motions which are on the agenda have speakers for. Have a bit of a chat amongst your colleagues from the region, and make sure all your slips are in place. And the key thing to remember this is you'll always hear this call from the chair that time is very crucial, as we mentioned in the first few slides. The proposer has 3 minutes of talk time to persuade you to vote in favor. What 3 minutes is what you're allowed for. So when you're preparing to talk or preparing a motion to speak on a motion, please be mindful that your speech or your arguments are within the 3 minutes, and that will help your audience to focus as well. So, and you to be not to get all your points across within the 3 minutes. So time yourself before you come in, and that's very important. So the proposer gets 3 minutes, and people who are speaking for the motion do get lesser time. I gather it's 2 minutes.
2 minutes. 2 minutes. And those slide, against. Can I just say, John?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
That again, if the chair proposes the motion because there is nobody to propose, it is very boring. Because all the chair says is, since there's no proposer, I am proposing the motion. There is no speech because the chair has to be neutral. The chair doesn't even have a vote unless it's a tie in the audience. So the chair will just say, and motion 31, since there's no proposer, I am proposing this motion. There's no debate. It is really boring. Don't let it come to that. We'd like to hear a lively voice for 3 minutes telling us why they think the motion is worthwhile. Yes, Imran, you're absolutely right. Brevity is sometimes more powerful, especially if you've got a good anecdote to go with it. Thank you.
Next slide, please. So debating a motion, the agenda committee has already decided the order of motions in your conference agenda pack. The top one, as Amit mentioned, is being the one debated and voted upon, not the others in the brackets. The proposer is from the region or nation in the bracket. So if it says London North or London South, that's where the proposer comes from, and that's the first motion up on that under that section or on the number. So that you need to submit a speaker slip from that particular region. If the top motion is a composite created by the agenda committee, the proposer is from the group that submitted the next motion in the bracket. So if the composite motion says composite motion from agenda committee, etc., and it says the next motion says it's from, so that next motion will be the priority. That proposer comes from the motion just below that. And they must propose a composite motion, not their own. So the composite motion is being redone, redeveloped, and that's in the first motion. So you don't propose the motion which you have submitted. You talk on the motion which it might be amended, modified, etc., for reasonable reasons. So please do read and talk for that particular composite motion. Next slide, please. So this is it's a small slide. You can see the motion number and from the conference agenda committee about what is mentioned, and then you can see on the slide motion by Yorkshire Regional SAS. That's number 2, and then you can see West Midlands. So if you are from Yorkshire Regional SAS, then you are the one who's going to speak for the conference agenda committee motion, which actually mirrors what your thought process were, what your motion were was, etc. Doesn't mean that the person coming from West Midlands can't speak for the motion or against, depending on what it is. So if it's for the motion, then you can also submit a speaker slip, and as I said, as Amit said, it gives more lively debate. If you're a first-time speaker, etc., etc., you get the sort of call up to come and air your views, because the views submit discussed or debated, you the one view which you hold might not be the one which everybody discusses. So it might be a sort of a fairly important point. So make sure that you submit your speaker slip again. So next slide, please. So debating a motion, a key thing, as we said again, time is the essence of the conference. The more time we get, the more motions are debated, the more uh, thoughts, processes, arguments, debates, etc. we hear. So please prepare yourself when you submit a speaker slip. Come to the front, be ready to that you will be called. Assume that you'll be called, so you be prepared. Please stand close to the lectern. The lectern is in front of the dais. It's down. It's down, not on the top table. It's down there. It's quite obvious. It's on the from the hall. If you look, it's on the right hand side, if I'm not mistaken. So be prepared to come to the lectern. So you'll save probably 10-20 seconds. If you go through 20 motions here, you're saving a few minutes. So again, if you're speaking for or against a motion, you got 2 minutes. As I said, the proposer's got 3 minutes. You'll have a small circular dial at a timer on the screen. There's a screen on the lectern. It's not visible to others. It's visible to you because it's facing you. And the small screen, which is green, and as you speak, it's like a timer, and it turns off into a red circle. So you basically times yourself. So at the red you must stop speaking. So you pace yourself so you can stop speaking at red. The chair otherwise will intervene to stop your proposal, etc. There too, in view of the time. The proposer has a right to reply if, say, for example, you're proposing a motion and there's a debate going on between two in a topic. For example, you say whether, for example, now the weather is dry, whether you need a hosepipe ban or not. So you say we don't need a hosepipe ban. It's been raining quite good in the winter months. So, and you say no, we have to conserve water. We don't know what's going to happen next few months. So you propose against. So you got for against. Somebody says yes. Somebody, then the next person says no. But the first person, remember, the proposer who first started the debate, will be called back. So you don't run back to your seat. So stay quite close to the lectern. So you have the right to reply to whatever people have been debating against your motion or what you proposed. So you've got a minute, I think, for you to come back to reply, to clarify any thoughts, etc. And keep an eye on. You might hear shouts for call for parts. For example, if you're, say, in parts, for example, your motion proposes you need a hosepipe ban in Northwest, in South London or North London. You don't need a hosepipe ban in all three areas. So people might say, can you take it in parts because it's been raining in London, for example. You don't need a hosepipe ban there. So you say, okay, A is taken in parts. So you vote for A, you vote for B, and vote for C, for example. And if you hear a reference means that means the motion is not passed in entirety. Amit will come to that when we talk about amendments and riders, etc. So that is not taken as policy, but it can be taken up. So it is up to you or the proposer to decide whether you want the motion to be taken up as a reference. There might be comments from the top table. What we mean by the top table is you'll have the chair of conference, deputy chair of conference. You might have BMA officers sitting up there, and they might have their views on what the proposer has said. So depending on that and what forms your view would be, a sort of an informed decision on whether you take it as a reference or take it as a motion in full to be voted on. Amit, anything to add for you in that context regarding reference?
No, I think you're.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So point of information. So if a member has a point of information regarding a motion, the chair of conference has a discretion to allow this to be heard. So, for example, this is where it becomes interesting. So, there's no speaker slip submitted for this particular point of information. So, the point of information should be kept very concise and factual. And for example, is given down there regarding a motion calling for additional funding for A&E departments. This conference should be aware that the health secretary confirmed yesterday that additional funding would be granted for emergency care. So, for example, if that motion was there and the additional funding, somebody in the audience, probably knows, read the correspondence from the Department of Health and Social Care saying that the funding came in last evening at 6 o'clock, and obviously all this is set in stone by then probably that will give an new point of information. So you can say point of information, and you come to your mic, which is on either side, and then relay your point of information, which is be very short, concise, and be appropriate to that. Next slide, please. So ending the debate. So when everyone has spoken, the chair will proceed to a vote. You would have all received instructions via email at how to access the online voting system along with the full user guide. Please ensure if you download the whatever necessary software you need for this, please ensure you set it up before the start of conference. Obviously, when you come on the morning, you can get help from the agenda committee, but it is pretty straightforward. Usually there are three options to present in the vote. You're either for, against, or you can abstain. And the motion is carried if there's a majority in favor. However, having said that, some motions need to be 2/3 majority. Example, suspending standing orders and votes with financial implications for the BMA. So obviously that needs a 2/3 majority. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Amit to continue with the rest of the presentation.
Okay, just some more information. The first thing is that there's an app, and the advantage of the app is that you can see it all on the phone, the way we're proceeding, where the agenda items are, etc., etc. But I would suggest I carry a laptop into the hall only because it's easier to access things. So if you can, bring a laptop as well. But if you're using the app, the advantage is voting is easier. You can log in. You have to use your credentials. That's right, Suzanne. I agree with you. If you just read out the motion, it's a bit boring. Make it interesting. Give us some facts, not factoids, facts, so we can challenge stuff. Next slide, please. You can amend a motion. You may find a motion is not to your liking in certain respects, and I'll show you how. Largely, it may be a devout nation will approach you and say this motion is very England. Can you make this all four nations? If you are presenting that motion, so you have to accept the amendment because the amendment is debated first. So you can amend the motion, and the amendment is debated before we start the motions debate. So if the amendment falls, then we debate the original motion as it stands. Otherwise, the amended motion is debated. And the last date for the amendment, correct me if I'm wrong, Chloe, is the 9th of May, and 9 o'clock on the 19th of May, which is Monday morning, 9 a.m. next week. Next slide. Just to give you an example, if the amendment is agreed, then the amended motion is proposed by the mover of the amendment. If the amendment is not agreed, then the mover of the original motion proposes the motion and debate starts. So I'll give you an example. The next slide is, if you don't look at the red first, don't look at the red. So the motion was by SAS Conference Gender Committee that this conference urges the BMA to negotiate the reopening of the associate specialist grade. With whom? So then the amendment was to work with a key partner organizations such as the Royal Colleges and NHS England to negotiate the reopening of the associate specialist grade. So this was proposed, the amendment passed, and then the amended motion was discussed and became policy. It's important to make a motion policy because SASC will not do anything other than what policy you set for SASC. So this then became SASC policy, and we fought to reopen the associate specialist grade. Cheers. Next motion. Next slide, sorry. Right. A rider is different from an amendment. A rider is you can add or subtract a word. So I give you an example. If it's an England motion, a devolved nation chair or devolved nation member may say, can you add a rider to make this applicable to devolved nations? You can leave words, you can insert words, you can alter the statement. But again, the rider also should be submitted before the deadline, only because the chair can prepare then as to how much time each motion is going to take so that we don't lose time. And the rider is debated. This is different from the amendment. The rider is debated after the original motion is carried. Next slide. Okay. And that's the example. There was a motion from Conference Gender Committee about coding. And there was a rider attached to it. Next slide. Reference. So sometimes when you present a motion, somebody will stand up and say, look, I disagree with so and so and so and so. Can you take it as a reference? It doesn't mean that the motion is consigned to history, and it means that SASC will deliberate on it as a reference. It doesn't become policy straight away, but we are asked to deliberate on it as a reference. And mostly this is for motions that have a problem with the wording. Again, for example, if the devolved nation person hasn't stood up and said this is an English motion only, they'll say it there and say we should make it pan-nation, etc., then it becomes a reference. It is the choice of the proposer to accept it. The chair asks the proposer, do you want to take it as a reference? The proposer can say no. If they say no, the motion is debated as a substantive motion. If they say yes, then it becomes a reference. Very often, if a motion has 6 parts, 1 or 2 will become a reference and the other 4 will carry through. And that's absolutely fine. It doesn't mean that it's not policy. It is still policy to an extent, in that we have to consider it going forward. Next time. Emotions. Emotions are those that are non-controversial, which is something we don't debate. There are about 5 or 6 emotions, and then we vote on them as a block, and they become policy. Mostly, these are motions that have either been policy in the past. So, for example, if somebody puts a motion today that reopen the associate specialist grade, it will be debated. But if they put the motion 5 or 6 years ago and it was always policy, it would become an A motion. If something is already policy, we tend to make it an A motion. But if something is going to be controversial and want to be debated, the agenda committee tends to leave it in the white in the section. You can read one of those. Another thing A motions are is that motions which are acceptable motions, which means that nobody will speak against them. So, for example, the first one in the example is Southern SASC. Conference applauds and proves the firm stance of governments in Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales not to impose the contract on junior doctors in August 2016, as declared by Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt for England. Nobody wants to speak against that. We do applaud the government. So it's an acceptable motion. Next one. Next slide. The next slide is chosen motions. So in your pack, as well as online, as well as in your app, you will receive a link to vote for chosen motions. These are motions that are in the gray section in the agenda, but you would like to have them debated. Um, Normally, we say that 15 of the attendees attending conference should vote for these motions. And again, it's a vote that you have to make before 11 a.m. on Tuesday, the 20th. I'm pretty sure it's before 11 a.m. Because then the chosen motion section is then ordered. Otherwise, we just carry our normal debates in and give the chair a little bit of um, time to play around with the motions. Next slide. Gray motions. Gray motions. So if you look at the agenda, there are lots of motions in the white. The agenda committee, expect that all the white motions will be debated. The gray motions are grayed either because they're not worded properly or the ask is just not there, or it's a low priority, or something has already happened and the events have overtaken it. Also, sometimes in sections there are 20 motions and we can only debate 5. So we grade the other 15, but you can request it to be a chosen motion. If you just look at motion 14 in the gray, that this conference notes that the CPD requirement is the same for all doctors and that study leave allocation needs to be the same for all doctors. This conference deplores the fact that some trusts continue to offer study leave pro rata to part-time staff. This must end. Now, you're not sure what this motion is asking the BMA to do. Either it's asking us to make sure that the study leave should be same for all doctors or less than full-time doctors. Who is it asking to do what? It's this must end. How? You know, we can't make that policy unless we have some idea as to how this would become policy. That's why it's great. However, conference may decide, no, we think this is a brilliant motion, and 15 people may vote for it. In that case, we have to debate it. Next slide. That's it.